Robinson Crusoe. Who doesn't know his name? The famous British adventurer who shipwrecked on an apparently desert island and spent there 28 years. The writer Daniel Defoe, the famous novelist of London, writes this book of adventure in 1719. A work that will be recognized as his most famous one, in which he describes in great details, in a travel diary form, the adventures and misadventures of the already mentioned English character. Robinson Crusoe, the last of three sons of a wealthy family of the north of England, is an exuberant young man who loves adventure. So he decides to sail and discover new lands, in spite of his father's will of seeing him collocated in the society, living a life of leisure. In one of his travels, passing in front of the Canary Islands, their ship is taken over by some Arab pirates. In this moment, the words of his father, who always wanted him to stay in his native country, gain more importance than ever, considering that he turns from being a merchant into a miserable slave. After 2 years of slavery, he finally escapes on a small vessel together with another guy, Xury. The wind forced them to set an opposite course to Spain, the place he wanted to reach, and to sail along the coast of Africa towards the south. They arrive in Brazil, thanks to a Portuguese ship that rescues them. As a free man once again, Crusoe settles in the country and starts businesses with sugarcane plantations, until the day he decides to live again on a ship, accepting some landowners' propose. The men, who were looking for Negro slaves, proposed to finance the entire trip to Guinea, as long as Robinson would have managed the negotiations on the spot. A violent hurricane causes the sinking of the entire crew, more or less 20 days after the departure, and our dear Robinson is the only survivor that wakes up on a desert island. He is confused and scared, but at the same time he is lucky, because the wreck of the boat is just in front of the shore, stranded on a rock, mostly intact. In the following days he reaches 12 times the boat and takes everything he could: food, weapons, planks of wood, utensils, several books including a Bible. These things will help enormously for his survival, as well as the dog and the 2 cats discovered still alive on the boat, that will keep Robinson company for many years. And now, for this man, in love with adventure, navigating, and who had already accumulated several experiences, starts a quiet, difficult and tedious life, characterized by successful and unsuccessful moments, and also by a strong spiritual attitude. Every day he needs 3 hours to find himself some food by hunting. Further, he will succeed in growing a grain plantation, thanks to which he will coarsely make bread. In this solitary life, the Defoe's character becomes very religious, finding in God the only real source of strength. One day, after more than 10 years, Robinson sees something that paradoxically shocks him: a human footprint on the sand. He is deeply stunned by the idea that he had never been alone, or at least he wasn't anymore, and at the same time, he is confused, because he doesn't understand if, on the other hand, he should feel himself relieved to see another human being after all that time. He discovers that the island is used to make acts of cannibalism. Despite this, still many years will pass before the decisive encounter with Wednesday, a native of a local tribe that Robinson saves from cannibals who were about to sacrifice. He called him Wednesday in regard to the day of the week he appeared. From that moment, his life is not boring anymore for sure. He teaches to his new servant to communicate, to help him with daily matters, and converts him to Christianity. Further, Robinson on Wednesday will save other two persons from cannibals, of which one is the father of the savage. The two men that have now become inseparable will return to homeland thanks to an English ship, after having freed the captain and other two men, three victims of a mutiny that were brought on the island by the rest of the crew. On day 11 June 1687, Robinson Crusoe reaches the UK once again, after an absence of 35 years. His old country seems to have not reserved a lot to him. He doesn't know anybody, and even of his family only remain two sisters and two children of one of his brother. The only positive things of his return is the finding of his benefactor. He looks for the old captain who saved him after his escape from Morocco, and he actually finds him in Portugal. Thanks to the old man, he finds out that the plantation he left in Brazil yield an enormous money return. Also thanks to his associates, who honestly managed the property in his absence. Robinson, together with his lawyer Wednesday, now on their way to England, in order to ensure his riches there, will face the last big adventure dealing with a pack of wolves and a bear. The end of the first part of Crusoe's life, as the author defines it, comes close. The protagonist settles in England, he gets married and starts a family, but after several years, he gives himself up to the temptation of sailing again, dragged by his nephew that he sent across the seas in the previous years. On this new and damp-themed journey, he drops by his island, where now the peaceful Spanish community is settled, and he gives them food, weapons, clothes, and more. We can say he administrates the island as he would be a peaceful governor. The adventures of this extraordinary character will continue in the future novels written by Defoe. The author writes this novel in the Illuminist period, when in England the bourgeoisie is rising. Who better than Robinson Crusoe personifies the middle-class personality of that time? This man who gives up to the comforts of a linear lifestyle and has an uncontrollable wish of discovering the world, a businessman, a merchant to be precise, obstinate, rational and smart. The usage of the intellect and the orderliness of the character are additional aspects of that historic period. All the literary works written by Defoe are strongly connected to reality. In fact, this history is inspired to a real story of a Scottish pirate who spent more than 4 years, October 1704, February 1709, on a desert island of Southern America. After all, Defoe is born as a journalist. He starts to write novels for economic reasons, trying so to attract as many persons as possible. This story is written as a travel diary, a literary form that creates a strong sense of reality. The religious aspect of the novel is also interesting. Defoe describes Robinson as someone not too much religious, but afterwards it will be from God that he will gain the strength to continue living. Personally, I really appreciate this book. The author describes everything accurately, making the reader feel each situation as he would be there. The track of time that Defoe creates really impressed me. I felt as relieved as Robinson when he returned back home, as if I spent 28 years on that island just like him. "28 years instead that are difficult to make into a film. Despite this, The Spanish filmmaker Luis Buñuel, in 1954, is the creator of an accurate reproduction. The film starts with a narration of Robinson himself, who is played by Dan O'Herlihy, who briefly explains what has been going on until the day he shipwrecks. Basically, the movie starts from this point, with his awakening on the tree as the same as the book. All the rest of the film is focused on the time on the island, following the Defoe's tale. It's comprehensive, that making the entire story into the film, it would have been complex, especially because the book is not based only on the time on the island. The only event not represented in the film is the rescue of the father of Wednesday. The movie is quite linear for the Buñuel's standards, that is considered as one of the leaders of the surrealist cinema. He had been often under criticism because of the themes he used to develop, like sexuality, the irrational, and the critique to organized religion. This time, he uses his imagination to make this novel into a film, and also in this occasion, his remarkable talent is evident. He successfully recreates the events mentioned in the book. The religious aspect, for example, is very well made. The theological parameters in the debate between Robinson and Wednesday are correct, and it is something that should not be underestimated, considering that Buñuel is an outspoken atheist. Is engaging the simplicity used by Buñuel. A fascinating vintage movie that, in my view, has to be reevaluated.